the Utah Jazz just made a really interesting trade that might have gotten them a real blue chip asset from the Phoenix Suns. Let's look at this trade. According to Shams Charania, the Phoenix Suns are trading their 2031 unprotected first to the Utah Jazz for 3 first-round picks. The Suns are acquiring the least favorable firsts in 2025 of Cleveland, Minnesota, 2027 of Cleveland, Minnesota, Utah, and 2029 of Cleveland, Minnesota, Utah. So what does this mean? They are getting the least favorable of those 3 picks in those 3 seasons. So Utah, when they made the Rudy Gobert trade and the Donovan Mitchell trade, they got those picks back. What these trades are doing is that it allows the Phoenix Suns to get a first-round pick in those 3 seasons, but it's going to be the worst of all 3. So in 2025, it's actually just between Cleveland and Minnesota, and they get the worst pick. That's this upcoming draft. That is likely going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers pick, which is likely going to be the last pick of the first round. Utah's probably thinking they've got a lot of young players they'd like to consolidate, and that's a lot of what this trade means. It means instead of getting 3 first-round picks in all those drafts, they're going to get 2 in each of them. It's still 6 young players, but they're shaving off the worst of all 3 trades. So in 2025, they're likely getting the Cleveland Cavaliers pick, and then in 2027, it is the worst of Cleveland, Minnesota, or Utah, and then the same thing for 2029. What's interesting is it's just Minnesota and just Cleveland in 2025, but in 2027 and 2029, it actually includes Utah. So let's say in this draft, the Utah Jazz win the lottery and get Cooper Flagg and become a really good team really quickly. Come 2027, Utah will get the best of those 2 picks, and the worst one goes to the Phoenix Suns. That could be the Utah pick, it could be Minnesota, it could be Cleveland, whoever is the worst. So basically what the Suns are getting is 3 first-round picks. Yes, they're the least of all those 3, so they're not very desirable first-round picks, but it does give the Phoenix Suns trade assets that they can possibly use to trade for Jimmy Butler, which is something they're trying to do. Is that a possibility? According to Ira Winderman, who covers the Miami Heat, this is the first step in the Miami Heat trading Jimmy Butler to the Phoenix Suns. So for Phoenix, they are doing a win-now move that gives them trade assets to bring over Jimmy Butler, pair him possibly with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. They have their big 3 again. They'll probably find some sort of mix of teams to trade Bradley Beal. He has to waive a no-trade clause to make it happen, but it wouldn't be surprising if they're able to get that done, if this is indeed the first step towards that process. Now, for Utah, you're getting a 2031 unprotected first-round pick. The players that are going to be in that draft are like 12 years old, but you don't know how good that pick is going to be. But considering what the Phoenix Suns are doing right now and how they've run their organization, you can bet that has a chance to be an extremely good pick. Phoenix is making win-now moves right and left, and they are completely mortgaging their future. So you can bet they're going to try to win, but they keep bringing in older players. This is a perfect example. Kevin Durant is in the twilight of his career. Devin Booker's in his prime, but Jimmy Butler is also entering the twilight of his career. They're paying this for a win-now move, and they'll likely continue to try to make win-now moves as they keep going, and it means that this pick from the Suns is likely going to be very good. Now, come 2031, if it's not that great, it's also fine, because what this does is instead of having 3 picks that don't have a ton of value, there's not a lot of teams out there that are going to do a lot for those picks from the Jazz. But having a fully unprotected pick from the Phoenix Suns in 2031 is an absolute blue chip pick. It's something they could absolutely trade for a great player at some point. If Utah has an incredible core and they have this pick, they can use it to make a trade, or they can just hold on to it. If it turns into a top 3 pick for the Jazz and they already have an incredible core, and you add a top 3, top 5 guy to that core, that makes this Jazz run a potential dynasty run. Obviously, that's the ceiling for what the Jazz do, but it's now a possibility. And so anyone who says this is not a good trade, it absolutely is. The other thing you have to think about for the Utah Jazz, they will have 9 players on the roster going into next season. They will have the 3 players they drafted, Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh. They will have the 3 players from the last draft, Isaiah Collier, Cody Williams, Kyle Filipowski. They will also have Walker Kessler, and then they will now have the 2 players they are drafting in this upcoming draft. Hopefully that's Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper, one of those top 3 picks, as well as their pick from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Utah is going to have a lot of young players on the roster next season. Having another player that's from the late first round, likely not going to be a game-changing player, at best a good role player. This makes a lot of sense for Utah. It is a gamble because you never know what that Suns pick will be, but it absolutely sits out there as a potential trade piece and will be looked at by a lot of teams as a really nice trade asset, something Utah could absolutely use in upgrading their roster down the road. Utah is still in the rebuilding phase. They're definitely going after Cooper Flag, but having this pick and having it down the road is absolutely setting them up to either use the pick in 2031 or you trade that pick for a third star or supplementary pieces that help you get over the top and possibly make the finals in 3-4 years once the Utah Jazz have gotten to where they want to be. Guys, this is a great trade for the Jazz. It's an interesting one for the Suns. We'll see if the Miami Heat trade Jimmy Butler, and this is a part of it. Maybe Utah continues to be involved. Maybe Utah's going to be able to make even more moves because they have John Collins, they have Colin Sexton, they have Jordan Clarkson, 3 players that they could potentially move that could also just be salary filler if the Heat and the Suns need players to make some sort of trade happen. Guys, like and subscribe to the channel. I'll talk to you next time.